Hello and welcome back to my channel, The Beauty of Homemaking. Today I wanted to share some of the things that I can for the cold winter months. I like to prepare for winter by picking berries and freezing them, or making jam, as well as canning different types of veggies. I know it's so hard to think about winter since fall just started, but I do like to prepare for the colder months. It's something my mother did and I enjoy doing it myself as well now. So I hope you enjoy this video and it gives you some ideas for what you can do with your extra veggies if you have any, or if somebody gave you some, or you can just sit back and enjoy the video. Okay, so I'm starting out by making the sweet and spicy pickles, and first thing you saw me do was line a sheet of aluminum foil in my oven. I will be placing the jars in the oven later on, and this really helps cut down on the mess. So next I need to sterilize the jars, and I did wash all of my jars in the dishwasher, but I'm going to take the extra step and sterilize them by placing them onto my kettle while it's boiling, and the steam from the water is going to sterilize them, and I do this to each of my jars. Okay, so in the recipe that I will link down below, it says to only put dill on the bottom of the jar, but I went ahead and put a few other things, and I think that the more extra stuff you put, the more flavorful it is. Although I did make these pickles later on, I did film this a few weeks ago, so I did also make another batch of these sweet and spicy pickles because we do love them so much, by only adding the ingredients that is said in the recipe, and they turned out amazing. So either way, you can add more or you can just follow the recipe. So what I'm adding is some garlic cloves. I added 2 to each jar, some horseradish leaves. I'm also going to add some ground black pepper. I do like to go ahead and add black peppercorns, but I ran out, so I used the ground black pepper, and I was worried about it, spreading out onto the pickles, but it actually didn't. It sunk down and it worked out just great. And then I also added some of the dill. So I'm going to add this to all of the jars and then fill them up with the pickles. For the marinade, you will need 1.5 quarts water, 300 grams vinegar, 170 grams sugar, 2 tablespoons salt, 260 grams chili ketchup, and dill sticks to cover enough of the bottom of the jar. And like I mentioned before, you can use other ingredients like I did. I also put some garlic cloves, ground black pepper, horseradish leaves, if you want to, but you don't have to. And then I poured this marinade. Well, first I had to boil it and let it cool off a little bit. If you click on the link below, you will see all of the instructions on how to do it properly. And then once it cooled off, I poured it into the jars, or it was a little bit warm when I did pour it in. And then I put the lid on, and for the lids I also sterilized them by washing them first and then pouring hot boiling water over them in a glass bowl or a ceramic dish like you see over here. And then I put the top of the lid over the jar and kind of screwed it on just a little bit, just like one turn without screwing on completely, just so it holds in place. And then I put it into a preheated oven of 260 degrees Fahrenheit, and it really depends how big your pickles are, or you just have to kind of look at the color. I can't even say how many minutes because I honestly don't remember how long it takes, but it just depends on the size of the pickles. Mine were rather big, so the ones I was using this time, so it really depends. You just have to look at the color, just keep an eye on it. It will take sometime 15 to 20 minutes, somewhere between that time, but you just have to look. When you see the color change, you basically remove them from the oven, close the lid as tight as you can, and be very careful. It will be very hot. And then screw the lid on until it's completely closed, and flip it over, and you just let them cool off that way. now I'll be making the tomatoes, and you want to start out by doing the marinade. And I forgot to mention, for the pickles, you will need to, for the pickles as well as the tomatoes, you will want to triple the recipe depending on how much you have. I had a lot of pickles and a lot of tomatoes, so I did have to triple it for all of them. And so you will need, for the tomatoes, you will need 1 liter water, 50 grams salt, 75 grams vinegar, 170 grams sugar, and you want to bring this to a boil and let it cool off while you're working on preparing everything for the tomatoes. And for the jars, you want to wash them as well. I like to wash them in the dishwasher, like I mentioned before, and sterilize them, and as well as sterilize the lids also. So then I'm going to add some shredded carrots to the bottom of the jar, slice some onions, and a few pieces of dill sticks. I also added some horseradish leaves as well as some garlic cloves, ground black pepper, and I had some blackcurrant plants growing on my property, so I also took some of those leaves. And like I said before, the more you add, the more flavor and a nicer smell it gives to the tomatoes. So you want to also add the tomatoes into the jar. I am cutting them because my jars are smaller. I don't have a lot of big jars. I prefer to can them whole, but these are medium-sized tomatoes, so there would probably be only 3 or 4 tomatoes in a jar if I did leave them whole. So I wanted to fit as much as I could, so I did slice them in half and make it work. You just have to kind of play around with it just to see, have as many tomatoes fit in there as possible. And then you want to pour the marinade into the jars and do the same thing. Don't close the lid completely closed, but just enough so it holds on. And put them into a preheated oven of 240 degrees Fahrenheit. And also you have to keep an eye on them until you see that there's little bubbles start coming up and the skin on the tomatoes, pops. And then you want to use a towel and be very, very careful. They are very hot, to remove them out of the oven, close them shut, completely shut, and flip them over and let them cool off like that. Next, I'll be making the Adjika, and we absolutely love Adjika, especially my husband. And here on the blog where I found the recipe, it describes it as pesto is to Italians like Adjika is to Slavic people. Hopefully that describes it to you. We love it. We use it on meat, with meat, on sandwiches, different types of recipes. So what you will need is 2 large carrots peeled and cut into 1-inch pieces, about 5 medium apples peeled and cored, 3 to 4 large bell peppers chopped into 1-inch pieces, about 5 cups ripe tomatoes sliced into quarters, 1 cup olive oil, about 24 large garlic cloves, and 14 medium jalapenos. Now, my husband does not like, spicy food, so I added 4. I know that's a big difference, but just so there would be a tiny little hint of, that it's spicy. And then 2 tablespoons salt, but you can add as many jalapenos as you want. You can add all 14 if you want. And then you will need to process all of this on a food processor or blend all this using a food processor. I used a blender because I dropped my food processor this year, or at the beginning of this year, yes, and it broke, so I can't use it, but a blender worked well. And make sure to sterilize your jars. You do have to bring the Adjika to a boil a few times. You will see if you click the link down below where I will link the recipe. So make sure your jars are sterilized well, and pour the Adjika in, and then you will, put the sterilized lids over it, not shutting it completely, but just a little bit so it holds on, and put it into a preheated oven, and you will let it, stay in the oven for as long as it says in the recipe. I honestly don't remember. It was so late. Although this video, is quick, and I just show you what I do. It takes hours and hours to prepare everything. This went well into the night, so I apologize for the lighting, but I finally finished and everything was done, and it felt amazing to see all those beautiful jars lined up and ready for winter. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you did. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.